Well, question arose from one of the commenters on reliability, services, what my thoughts were on specific engines. So I told the family, look, I'm going to go walk down the street. I'll be right back. Typically, if I don't do a video on something right away that I think is going to be interesting to a lot of people, I forget, and then I get caught up with other stuff and I don't do it. This is an important topic, so I figured I need to cover this now before I do forget. This person said, what do you think about the 3.5, the 3.7, the EcoBoost? We're just going to go through a bunch of stuff right now. And I'm going to give you my experience as a Ford technician. The 3.5 engines are phenomenal. They're great engines. They make a lot of power. And when I say this, the naturally aspirated non-turbo engines. The only issues that I've really had with the 3.5 and like the Explorer, the Edge, the MKZ, what else will we put it in? Didn't some of the Fusion Sports or something like that have the 3.5 in it? Anyway, it was just a water pump. Right at about 100,000 miles, between 100 and 120,000 miles, you'd have to pay, if you had an Edge, I think it's like a 10, somewhere around 10 and a half hour job, 11-hour job. I think it was about the same for the Explorers, like a 9.5 to 10.5 hour job. And then once you got to like the older Lincoln MKZ or something like that, it was about a 14.5 hour job because there's no room to actually work on that motor in chassis. Guys drop it out on the table and stuff like that. There's like no room to get in there at all. The SUVs you can get in there. But that was a 120,000 mile service. Now if you looked at the Explorers with like the 3.5 or the 3.7, same thing. Both these naturally aspirated motors pretty much fall into the same category, including the Transits as well. The Transits, they had the 3.7 and 3.5. They are very reliable motors. You typically didn't have issues with them. We do have leaking PTUs that come in. Sometimes it's as simple as a seal, power takeoff unit, the four-wheel drive transfer case. Sometimes we could just replace a seal where like the CV axle or something goes into it. But most of the time, it's not even worth rebuilding and resealing the PTU. You buy a new one. I think you can get them for like $700-800, and then it's about a 4.5 to 6 hour job depending on where you get it done. It was minimal maintenance on those. The biggest thing was just the water pumps at about 100,000, 120,000 miles. Great motor, 5,000 mile oil change intervals, very, very easy, no problem with that. Naturally aspirated. And I was also asked if I had one of these motors, could I put a catch can on it? Well, you could. A lot of manufacturers that make these catch cans will actually specify whether or not it will void manufacturer warranty. But what a lot of guys do is they just pull the catch can off, put the factory stuff back on, and take it in for service. Now, I'm not encouraging people to do that, but I don't see the problem with it either. If you look at reliability of the 3.5 and 3.7, they are probably at the top of the chain when it comes to reliability of the Ford motor lineup, the engine lineup. Now, you could get the 3.5 and the 3.7 in an F-150. A lot of guys, they make all these claims, oh, you couldn't get the 3.5 or the 3.7 this year in that truck and all this other stuff. No. A lot of times you can actually special order a truck the way you want it. If the motors are available in other applications during that time frame, it's very minimal difference between something outside of just a wiring harness on how things are hooked up. So typically you could get 3.7 in a year that 3.5 was only available. I've seen people do it before, just like guys tell me, oh, it costs too much money to buy an F-250. No, it doesn't. It doesn't cost too much money to buy an F-250. I've seen people go to the dealer and order a stripped down version of a 6.2 liter four-wheel drive single cab long bed with power outlets in the bed of the truck and walk out of the dealer for $38,000, $39,000. I mean, it can be done. You can special order that truck how you want it, stripped down just to tow a camper, just to tow your race car or something like that, and not pay an arm and a leg to do it. Hell, at the Ford dealer I was at, the owner's brother owned a construction and lawn care company. The brother would order the trucks through the dealer, especially how he wanted them. He would order an F-250 with a 6.2 liter. He wanted just a regular radio in it, got the color of his choice, full-wheel drive. Some of them were short bed, some of them were long bed, and he would $38,000, $39,000. Order it how he wanted it. No other options, just regular cloth interior. It was a work truck, and it was better than going and buying most F-150s past 14, because you couldn't get the F-150 in the 6.2 liter past 2014. So there are options here. The 3.5, the 3.7, great vehicles, just absolutely phenomenal vehicles. 2.7 liter EcoBoost. In 2017, 2018, I went through a slew of cylinder heads, smoking on startup. And the first one, contacted hotline, told them what was going on. They said, it sounds like we're having an issue with this new TSB, that it applies to this new TSB where it's got some smoking on startup. Didn't matter if it was a 90-degree day or if it was a 40-degree day. You'd get the same kind of cloudy, grayish white smoke on startup. And they're like, yeah, it has something to do with the way the valve seals or something like that, or valve stems, or I don't know what the hell it was. Something leaking in the cylinder heads at the time. So on one of them, I did a passenger side cylinder head. The next one that came in a month later, I did both cylinder heads. And then the one after that was like an 18. Again, both cylinder heads. And it just, it was an issue, you know. Ford knew that there was a production problem a certain amount of months in those years. They were peppy motors. They were great motors. Since then, I haven't had a single problem with them. Maybe some of the oil pans leaking because they're plastic oil pans. Get a little turbo rattle from the clips on the turbo. Pivot points, that's normal. Seemed to be a pretty good engine overall. Never had any issues in the 2.7 liter twin turbo and like the Fusion all-wheel drive Sport. Never had problems with them. Only thing that I would get out of like the 2.7 liter turbo all-wheel drive Sport Fusion is the clicking on turns coming from the wheels. And it was as simple as pulling the knuckle assembly apart, pulling the CV axle out of it, and then reshimming the end of it where the CV axle goes into the wheel bearing. And then you're fine for another 30,000-40,000 miles until it would start doing it again. So that was really the only issue in that body style. If we look at, let's see, 4 cylinders. The 1.5 liter has always been a nightmare. Great running motor, kind of noisy, really peppy, great fuel mileage, but that motor is notorious for pulling oil back into the combustion chamber because of how it pulls up in the intake manifold, and they say that's normal. There's a bed of oil on the bottom of the intake manifold under the intercooler. It's like 3/4 inch tall, and it's probably 6 inches wide. It's just full of oil in that intake manifold, and they say that's normal for that motor. Well, where do you think that oil is going? Back into the combustion chamber. There's no relief. Like I hear some people overseas saying that 1.5 liter overseas, they actually have an updated intake manifold where the intake manifold has a drain-off tube that goes down into the air-oil separator in the block. So it drains off there all the time. But we don't have that option here in the US. The 6.2 liter. Only issue that I've ever had with a 6.2 liter is valve springs, and that was a very rare occurrence. You'd get a valve spring that would crack, and then you'd get the tool to actually compress the valve spring, pull the spark plug out of the cylinder, pump up the cylinder with air to hold the valve in the cylinder head, and then use the tool to compress the spring, take the keepers and stuff out of it, pull the spring and everything out, put a new spring and keeper and everything in, release it, take the air pressure out, the thing would run like brand new for another 60,000 miles before you'd have to put a couple hours into it. Some of them, I got a buddy that's got 175,000 miles on his 250 with a 6.2. Never had a single problem with it. Never been to the dealer for anything other than brakes and oil changes. That's it. Never had no other issue. So the 6.2 was a motor of its own with Ford. It was just a great motor. Let's see. The F-150 and the 3.5 EcoBoost. Phasers. The phaser rattle, the chatter and stuff that's going on with the cam phasers. It's timing chains, phasers. That's the issue that Ford's been struggling and battling with for a while. You know, it's just great motor, produces a lot of power, but a lot of guys that run the factory setup, they're not happy with it. You know, hopefully the new setup doesn't have those issues. When I say new setup, I mean 2021. And then the integrated wheel ends, the four-wheel drive actuators, turning left and turning right in two-wheel drive. And then once it gets bad enough, driving straight, you hear that chatter coming from the wheels. And it's those integrated wheel ends that are all screwed up. And then you'd have to go back in and put integrated wheel ends in it. Sometimes if it was bad enough and it was chattering long enough, you'd have to put wheel bearings in it. Then there's a check valve up on the firewall with a vacuum solenoid. A lot of guys would put lifts and stuff on their trucks and then hook up those vacuum lines backwards. And they would say, well, how come whenever I put it in four-wheel drive, either my four-wheel drive will actuate or it won't actuate? Or when I put it in four-wheel drive, I can get four-wheel drive, but when I go back to two-wheel drive, it won't come out of four-wheel drive. That's because you have your vacuum lines on backwards and there's no way for it to vent off. You took it to somebody that maybe made a simple mistake and hooked your vacuum lines up wrong. You know, front cover leaks on those, the 3.5s were a big issue as well. Front cover leaks on the 3.5 EcoBoost was an issue as well. But more on the EcoBoost than they're just naturally aspirated. Back to the four cylinders. I'm jumping around now as I'm remembering things. The 1.5 liter EcoBoost, just a very dirty, very loose engine. Great fuel mileage, peppy. It had coolant intrusion issues from 2016 to 2019. You could see the coolant drop in the reservoir. And you'd have to go into the dealership if it was still under powertrain warranty. You'd have to get the block replaced. Surprised Ford hasn't put out a recall to make sure customers are taken care of up to 125,000 miles or something like that for that coolant intrusion issue, knowing that it's an inherent problem that you could have 65,000 miles on the vehicle and then it start happening and then they're like, hey, you're not covered. But we knew from 2016 to 2019, technical service bulletin saying that we know we put out a faulty block, but you're not covered at 65,000 miles or 60,001 miles. Doesn't make any sense. Then you have the 1.6 liter. The 1.6 liter, it also had some of the coolant intrusion issues. Peppy engine, gas saver, dirty engine, loose engine. Then you had the 2.0 liter, non-turbo, peppy little motor for what it is for naturally aspirated. Rarely had any issues with it, but you would typically see that in like a Fusion or an Escape or a Focus. But you know about the Focus with the manual automatically controlled transmission. Clutch is going out. Sometimes you get a brand new clutch in that transmission and then a week later it's out again. And they knew that that was a common problem. They knew that that could happen. You could get a brand new one set up and 2 days later it's already screwed up. They knew. They know now. We got a guy at work that's got one that's already had 3 clutches put in it. It's got 140,000 miles on it. Ford knows their junk. But the 2.0 gas motor, you beat the living hell out of that thing. You just roll and roll and roll. Maybe it's an oil pan leak or front cover leak, water pump leak, but that's all typical basic stuff that you could have with any car. But a good motor though. Same thing with all the naturally aspirated motors. You can go up to 5,000 miles, no problem. I don't like the boosted motors. At 5,000 miles, they look awfully dirty, but definitely by 5,000 miles. Then if you look at like the 2.5 liter NA engine, no boost, like that, the 2.5 liter Ford engine was almost bulletproof. They ran that even in the earlier model Fords as well. That motor's been around for a long time. They got it in the little Transit Connects, and they got it in the Escapes, the Focuses. The problem is Ford wanted to force you into the boosted applications, the more sportier, fancier, more powerful applications, but the ones that inherently had more problems. And that 2.5 liter would have saved people a lot of money. Even the diesel tech at work, he's been in the field for 40 some years. He's got a Fusion. He's got like a 15 or 16 Fusion, a SE model. Really nice car. Looks like it's still brand new. It's only got like 40,000 miles on it. 2.5 liter. Never had a lick of problem with it. There's a reason why he bought that car. Because he knew it was the most reliable line of Fusion that they had. He's got like one of the last years for the E250 or 350 van that still had the 5.4 in it, because it was the 5.4 right before they quit putting them in there that never had any problems. Loves that thing. It's only got like 30-some thousand miles on it. It still looks like it come off the showroom floor. Absolutely gorgeous vehicle. He's got the windows all tinted and takes the family on trips and stuff with it. Tows his boat back and forth with it. Just absolutely great vehicle. What other? Then you got like the 1.0 liter engine that we never have problems with. The little small one that you see in the Focuses and the Fiestas or something like that. Never have issues with it. Then there's the brand new 1.5 liter 3-cylinder that's out in like the 2020, 2021 Broncos. I think they want to put it in like the Maverick or something like that as well. And that's a little boosted 1.5 liter. Haven't had a single issue with those so far. Now, there's a reason why I save these last motors for last. The 5.0 liter Coyote. Phenomenal engine. Tons of power out of this motor. Great motor. It's noisy. Come 16, 17, customers really started complaining about the noise coming from the engine. The pinging, the tinging, almost sound like piston slap. And in some cases it was bad. You know, they talk about cylinder liners and the way they were treating the cylinder liners and stuff causing issues. Oil consumption problems. Fuel and timing. Unless the vehicle was in sport mode, it was a noisy, crazy sounding engine. A lot of guys actually had them ripped out of their trucks and rebuilt and retuned and re-sleeved in an aftermarket way and never had a single problem after that. But it's a great motor. Put them in the Mustangs, put them in the F-150s. Just a great motor. They did have some oil consumption issues in 17 and 18. Some guys were saying they were losing a quart of oil every 500 to 1,000 miles. Had to keep topping it off all the time. Now Ford came out with a reprogram. They came out with a dipstick change where you would go from this level to this level. Notice this finger stayed the same, but this one went down. And as long as it was in this range, you were good. If you take that concept and you apply it to the brand new 2021 F-150 with a 5 liter, they're saying now that if your oil life gets 20% or less and you have dropped at least a quart or more, your vehicle will deactivate with a 5 liter 21 F-150. The computer needs to see the parameters above that 1 quart loss and above 20%. Those two can't ever meet up, because if they do meet up, the truck won't start. They've created a special program that you download on your computer at the Ford dealerships, where you go in when those trucks come in and you reprogram those computers for that concern, and it wipes all that out. Now, have they ever actually fixed the problem for the oil consumption? I've done a couple of the dipstick changes and reprograms. Never seen people come back, never heard them complain after that, but I did say just a couple of them. I've not done any more than 2 or 3 of them. So I don't have that experience to say whether or not it actually works. We know the dipstick thing was rubbish. We all know that. That was just a way to make the consumer buying the vehicle think that they were okay with a lower oil level than what was there before. Anyhow, I would have to say the top of the list by far is the 3.7 liter and the 3.5 liter and the 3.3 liter naturally aspirated motors. Don't really have problems with them. The 3.3, 3.5, and 3.7 to me all kind of fit in the same category. They're naturally aspirated, easy to take care of, didn't really have any crazy services to do on them between the PTU and the water pump timing chains. That was the biggest issue. That was pretty much it. The cop cars had issues with catalytic converters, PO 420 and PO 430 codes, but they reprogrammed a lot of them to get them to stop acting up, and then they actually went in and had to replace a lot of them as well because of the idle time. But I've never really seen that in passenger cars, not in my experience. So at the top of the list, I would have to say, if you wanted, somebody asked me not too long ago, I want to get a Transit, but I want to know what motor you recommend in the Transit. 3.7 liter, non-turbo, great motor, great setup, no issue. In my Explorer, am I going to get like a 2.3 liter or 2.4 liter or something like that? That 4-cylinder job they have in the Explorers, 2.3 liter, right? 2.3 liter turbo or a 3.5? 3.5 non-turbo. That's what I would choose. Any of the turbo applications between 3 to 5,000 mile oil changes, 5,000 being max. The naturally aspirated non-turbo vehicles, 5,000 easy. Yes, you could go up to 7,500, but I don't necessarily recommend that. What's the best motor of them all, though? Didn't produce all the power in the world, but it was the most reliable. The 4.6 liter 2-valve found in the town cars, the Panther platform cars, the F-150s, the Mustangs. That was a motor. It's the motor I have in my town car. Lowest maintenance, lowest issues. 2-valve 4.6, by far the most reliable that I've ever had to deal with. Easy to work on, cheap. Didn't make a ton of power, but it's easy to actually make power with them if you know what you're doing and you're patient. The most reliable motor that I've ever had that I could beat the living hell out of. I haven't tried to beat the living hell out of the 4.6 2-valve yet, but the one that I did try to kill that I could not kill was the 5 liter, the old roller motor 5 liter in the old Fox body Mustangs. Man, I could take 50 weight and dump in that motor and it'd love it. 30 weight, it would love it. I could put 0W20 in it, it might clatter a little bit, it'd take it and keep going. You could dump whatever you wanted in that motor. It would just say, oh, let's run, and it would run. Beat the living hell out of that thing, and it would just go, 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 nonstop. I'd take it to the races Friday night, and we'd camp out, and I'd beat the hell out of it Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Just mess that car up, try to break it, couldn't break it. Wasn't gas friendly. There was nothing efficient about it. It's just a gas hog 5 liter V8. It was a great motor. But out of the new stuff and the F-150 line, I would pick a 5.0. The Explorer, if you could get the Cop Edition 3.7, which a lot of people go to the police auction just so they can get the 3.7 liter, great vehicle, or a 3.5 naturally aspirated. If it was a Fusion, it would be a 2.5 liter non-turbo. If it was an Escape, it would be a 2.0 liter or 2.5 liter non-turbo. I forget if you can get the 2.5 in the Escape. I think you can, but what Ford did was if you got the 2.5 in the Fusion or the Escape, they stripped away the options. You couldn't get like a titanium package with a 2.5. I'm like, why? What if I wanted a titanium package with a 2.5 liter? Guys swear up and down you can't get it. The reason Ford does that is because they want you to buy the 2 liter turbo or the 1.5 liter, 1.6 liter turbo. It's kind of rubbish. You should be able to buy it how you want. So 4-cylinder lineup would be 2.5 liter, ultimately 2.5 liter. But if there's no option in your vehicle line for naturally aspirated, it would be the 2.0 liter. If I had to list the most reliable 4-cylinder turbo line by category, I would say 2.0 liter EcoBoost, 1.6 liter EcoBoost, 1.5 liter EcoBoost, in that order. If I had to list the V6s with the least amount of issues in the F-150, I would have to say the 2.7 liter EcoBoost from my experience. The 2.7 liter EcoBoost, and then the 3.5 liter EcoBoost for reliability. If I had to list the most reliable in the last 20 years, 4.6 liter 2 valve, the 5.4 liter 2 valve, yeah, the 5.42 valve, and then the 5.0, the 2.5 liter 4-cylinder, actually the 5.0, the 3.5 liter naturally aspirated, or the 3.7 in the same category, down to the 4 cylinders would be the 2.5 liter, then the 2.0 liter, and then the turbos options for those years would be under that. Yeah, the F-150 line 5.0, the Fusion line 2.5 liter, the Escape line the 2.5 liter or the 2.0, the Fiesta I'd try to get a 2 liter, no turbos, the Transit line 3.7 or 3.5. F-150 also makes a 3.7 and 3.5 version as well, so one of those would be just as reliable, if not more reliable, with maintenance and cost of like the 5 liter, but less power. And just me. Don't take what I say and say that that's a rule of life, because it's not. It's for me and what I see. 5,000 mile oil changes is all I'm ever going to go for any vehicle. I'm not going to go more than that. I just will not do it unless I buy a vehicle that's specifically for the channel to test out oil change intervals and where we can go with them. I'll buy a cheap vehicle if you guys want to do nothing but maintenance, and let's see how far we can push it to where it go, to where we can get it to go. That's what you guys want to do, we'll do it. Let me know. Other than that, a little jumbled up in this video, but I think you guys get the gist of it. I'm not a fan of the turbo motors. Very loose, very dirty, a lot of problems. I like the V8s. I like the naturally aspirated stuff. I don't have nowhere near the issues. And then you got some commentary in between about what I think about the industry and how they've handled certain situations. So I hope this is somewhat helpful. I know it's kind of all over the place. It was hard for me to stay on track without having everything on paper. But I think you get enough of it to not be super critiquey of the video, and at least give me the consideration of talking about this on a whim. Somebody literally just asked the questions, and I said, let's roll, baby. We're going. Thank you. I appreciate you. And I typically recommend, if it says 520, to stay with 520 or 530. They almost lay on top of each other. If you're gonna supercharge your 5.0 or something like that, in most of the manuals I see, it says that you have to go from a 5W20 or a 5W30 and you have to move it to a 5W50. So that's important as well for extra wear and protection. That's why they do that. That was another question that was asked. So that's a little bit of vehicle history in the last 10, 15 years, 20 years, depending. Threw a couple motors in there that people didn't ask about that I felt like were at least worthy of mentioning. Thanks, guys.